So in the 1980s, Margaret Thatcher. Is it Margaret Thatcher that formed the IPCC, or was it the United Nations?
I think it's the United Nations.
United Nations. Let's not give Thatcher the credit. In the 1980s, the United Nations formed the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change to figure out like the latest research and present the latest projections of like where the planet is going and that kind of stuff. I remember learning about global warming as a kid, and I just figured it's getting warmer. That sounds nice. I get to experience all the short-term increase in warmth without the long-term devastation to the planet, because I'll be dead by then. So that's I'm in the sweet spot, really. In 2007, the IPCC said that we might have like no ice left in the Arctic by the year 2100. But I've never been to the Arctic and I don't plan to go, and I'm going to be dead, so it's not a problem. And like all of the talk around climate change is quite abstract, isn't it? The Paris Agreement is a thing, like all the countries of the world, apart from recently America pulled out of it, but like generally they've all agreed to keep global emissions levels under a threshold of 2 degrees of warming. 2 degrees doesn't sound like much, it's kind of nice. They don't want the planet to be more than 2 degrees higher than pre-industrial levels. Apparently we're already 1 degree higher than pre-industrial levels. And I didn't really until recently have a sense of why that mattered. You know how like you wear white when it's summer, and if you wear black, like white reflects the heat and black absorbs the heat, so if you wear black it's hotter. It's basically the Earth is wearing white, like, because it's next to the sun. The ice like reflects a lot of the. This is assuming you'll believe in this. Like maybe you just think we're surrounded by an ice wall, in which case just carry on. You do you. I wish I didn't believe in it. My life would be a lot more peaceful. The ice reflects the heat back off the sun, but if the Earth heats up by another degree and the ice melts, we won't have our little like umbrella to protect ourselves from the heat. Instead, it will hit the ocean, which is very dark, and it will absorb most of that heat. And basically the Earth will, the theory is called hothouse Earth, which is terrifying, and it basically just means if we pass that threshold of 2 degrees, then the Earth is just gonna keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter forever. And like most of the coastal cities of the world, like, you know, New York and Washington DC and San Diego and like Hong Kong and Calcutta and like all of the population of Australia pretty much live on the coast, like all these places, they're just gonna go because the sea level is gonna rise and rise and rise. And like, so I just used to think, oh, climate change is really bad. We really need to do something about it. My understanding now is climate change is really bad. If we don't do something about it, we'll never be able to do something about it. Like we either deal with it soon or that's just it for Earth. The latest IPCC report from October of last year says
12 years till tipping point.
12 years till tipping point, 11 years now. The clock's ticking.
They're saying it's 12 years until the heating is irreversible, like it just goes out of control.
So yeah, by 2030, if we don't do something about our emissions, then the planet will be irreversibly fucked. So out of this news, an organisation has emerged called, a movement called Extinction Rebellion. Basically does what it says, like we want to rebel against going extinct. You may know of them because in April they closed off loads of locations in central London, and they put a big boat in the middle of Oxford Circus. Basically they're just blocking traffic, right, and being very peaceful about it, and just trying to raise awareness of, hey, there's a climate problem. So they put this big boat in the centre of town, and then police took it away and they lost the site. And then they managed to reclaim the site, and they all wore like, they made like hats that are shaped like boats, and they had this big sign that says, "We are the boat." You hear about protests and marches and stuff every now and then, like there's an animal rights march that happened last year, and I remember reading on the front page of The Guardian, like, the animal rights march in London, blah, blah, biggest animal rights, biggest protest since like the Iraq war or something. And you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you move on. Like the next day, the news is about something different. With the Extinction Rebellion, I remember seeing that, oh, these climate change protesters have taken over like these areas in central London. That's really cool. And I like went on the front page of The Guardian the next day, expecting to just read about something else and just go, that was a nice little moment where we were reminded that our planet is destroyed, and then we move on. And the next day, they were still there. They kept some of these sites for like a week or two, and it was really exciting. Like, oh fuck, they're actually serious, you know? They're like, no, the planet's still being destroyed, so we're just not going to leave. Basically, they have 3 demands. The first one is that they want to just have the government acknowledge that there is a problem and like the scale of the problem, and just kind of be honest about how much of a problem it is. The UK government this year declared a climate emergency, which sort of means like, it sort of means nothing. Like, I mean, on the surface, they're like, okay, we get it. There is a problem. We officially acknowledge there is a problem. But they're still doing a lot of things that like don't help. So they're not really doing anything differently. They're just going, do you know what? There is a climate emergency. Anyway, the first demand is basically for them to go, no shit, we really need to deal with this. The second demand is reduce net emissions to 0 by 2025, which sounds really soon. They're just going by this report that says if we don't do it by 2030, then we're all fucked. And we're giving ourselves a 5-year buffer period, which feels feasible. The government have so far said that they're going to reduce emissions to 0 by 2050, which again, very nice. Planet we fucked by then. By 2030, this will all be resolved. No one will be talking about climate change anymore, because either it would have been sorted or it really won't have been, and we'll just be swimming, and I'll buy, I'll get a new boat so that we can live in a new world where everything is like Venice, apart from Venice, which will have been flooded. Final demand is that they want like a citizens' assembly. I guess like a lot of people feel like the government don't represent ordinary people, and so they just want some ordinary people to be in there. The government have said they'll have a citizens' assembly, but that it won't have any sort of legal bearing on their decision. They've basically been like, hey you citizens, the date's 2050, tell us what we need to do. So the citizens aren't allowed to go, well, the first thing you need to do is change it to 2025, please. Yeah, so the 3 demands, like, take it seriously, 2025, and like, let citizens be involved. I've been involved with Extinction Rebellion for like 2 weeks. It's a bit like going to a meeting, like a village fete. You know where like you picture like a church hall where they're having like a second-hand sale, and they have like bunting and like little tables, and there's like an old woman with a cup of tea, like, you can have this for free, enter our raffle, it's only £1. That's essentially what Extinction Rebellion are like, except that they're trying to save the planet. You go to these meetings and they're like, everyone, let's just talk about how we're feeling. Turn to the person on your left and just check in with them and see how everyone's doing. Okay, we've got some announcements today. Janice has got something she'd like to say. Like, and it's like really civil and really lovely. But then the announcement is like, yeah, so the temperature's risen by 0.3 degrees and we're all going to die sooner. Okay, thanks Janice. Like, oh, great. Following up on the April rebellion, Extinction Rebellion have just started this summer uprising movement where they have taken over 5 cities across the UK. London, Glasgow, Leeds, Cardiff and Bristol, which isn't very far from where I live. So Georgia and I packed our things yesterday and headed out to help take a bridge and stand at a roadblock and maybe get arrested because, we believe in trying to send a message to do something about climate change more than we care about our own freedom and liberties.
The first demand is tell the truth. We are in an absolute crisis. Second demand of 2050. We say 2025. We say we need a citizens' assembly to decide what happens.
And it turned out that the police were actually very cooperative and helped us set the blockade up, and just wandered around all day having a lovely time and didn't arrest anybody. I basically just spent the day reading and sunbathing. It was less like a protest and more like a street party. They had music and they had talks, free food that they would give out and like take donations, a well-being tent where they would do yoga and meditation. And people seemed generally supportive of it. Like the Mayor of London was like, I realise there's a climate emergency, but we have to get even more police out, and they were supposed to have rest days and now they haven't got their rest days. Like, look, we've all got better things to do, mate. Like, none of us want to spend our time just standing about going on about the climate, but it's an emergency, isn't it? I think we got it pretty lucky. Like in Bristol, the police have been pretty cooperative. In London, I think they are making more arrests and taking a harder line. So if you're in any of those cities or live near them, we're going to be holding the bridges all week. Go check them out. Like, go just have a nice time. They're a really lovely group of people, very welcoming, and you can be informed and just do your bit.